Hey Emma,
Yes, Madeline.
did you hear about the new medical show that they're creating that's specifically entirely about injuries sustained playing sports and at McDonald's play places?
I don't know. What is it? I haven't. I mean, what is it called?
It's called The Ball Pit. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm Emma. I kind of nailed the setup, but kind of ruined it. Host Madelyn.
I'm gonna go yell at the actors in the ball pit on Broadway, host Emma.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's show. This week we're talking about F.E.A.R, or F.E.A.R, I guess.
Yeah.
And we're talking about ball pit, or bollocks pit.
The X is silent.
Yes, confirm that the X is silent, but just know that it's there.
Yes.
Which, at least one article said, it comes from shipping parlance. And then the actual quotes from him did not really say that. So, I like the idea that someone, like the Wikipedia page, I think, was like, yeah, it's a game about a relationship between the ball and the pit.
I do wonder how old, like, someone is in, like, fandom speak.
Yeah.
And if that does predate, like, the start of Hunter x Hunter, or not.
Hard to know.
I don't think that Hunter x Hunter is meant to imply that you're supposed to ship the hunters together.
It really made me reconsider that, frankly. And Spy and Family, like, it really made me think differently about those series.
Sure, yeah.
Having read that.
It is about, the X does imply, like, sort of a crossing and a coming together.
Sure. A fusion. So
even in shipping and in ball pit, the X is serving the same function, kind of.
Yes, but if you came to this looking for a romance between Lucille Ball and Brad Pitt, you are in the wrong place. There is almost certainly at least one piece of fan fiction.
I'm sorry, yeah.
And I'll look that up after the show.
Someone is writing it right now, having heard that. Yeah.
Anyway, first things first, though, we gotta talk about F.E.A.R, where no letters are silent.
No, all the letters are said.
So F.E.A.R, aka First Encounter Assault Recon, aka F.E.A.R, is a 2005 first-person shooter / psychological horror video game. One of the rare horror games that exists outside of the, like, Silent Hill, Resident Evil. Even though you may argue that it is not really... I thought it was interesting that it got talked about as horror, and to think about how we have converged upon mechanics that go along with that storytelling genre as well. Anyway, it's a video game. Originally for Windows, and then ported to Xbox 360, and then PlayStation 3, although PlayStation 3 maybe not so successfully, seemingly, middlingly. What a time, right? When ports used to be of, like, truly gigantically different quality, except for Nintendo Switch. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely still porting studios.
Yes. No, not disputing that.
Yes, but that used to be, like, a real, like,
concern.
You weren't doing your own ports.
Yeah.
Very often.
Anyway, F.E.A.R was developed by Monolith Productions.
Rest in peace.
Yes, WB closed that studio last year. Also known, for the Shadow of Mordor Nemesis system, and various other games. But they had not really put out a game in, like, a while, because they were working on
I think they had a really big project canceled.
Yes, they were working on some kind of big Wonder Woman game that got canceled.
Right, yeah.
And then they closed the studio. But they were not owned by WB when they made F.E.A.R, which is sort of relevant to some stuff about the sequels. So developed by Monolith Productions, published by Vivendi Universal Games.
They seem to actually kind of resent the name F.E.A.R, which they apparently did not choose themselves.
Sure, but then they fought, semi-hard to get it back. So
Sure, for keeping the series. But there were a few interviews where they were like, because F.E.A.R, which stands for First Encounter Assault Recon, implies that there has to be a F.E.A.R team, it seems like at some point they would have rather cut that, actually.
Sure. To me, though, feels like a self-imposed restriction, because how many people really internalized for themselves that that's what F.E.A.R stands for? Ultimately, they probably could have come up with some other equally silly acronym utilizing F.E.A.R, or not, or could have just kept the title and not done that. They aren't Yakuza in Yakuza anymore.
I just appreciate some of the interviews where they were like, yeah, like we had to put this exposition at the beginning because we had this F.E.A.R team thing that we had to explain, and we really don't like it actually, and we wish it wasn't there, but
yeah. Anyway, the F.E.A.R team that Emma references is a U.S. military unit that basically is sent in to investigate when there are suspicions of paranormal activity.
X-Files, but more military.
Yes, like aggressive X-Files.
Yes.
Sorry, aggressive files. My mistake. Because we don't pronounce the...
Right, you're right.
I thought maybe you didn't get that, so I just wanted to underline the joke there. Anyway, so in F.E.A.R, there's a very complicated story going on here, which people generally liked the story in the first one, and then less and less as time went on with the series. There's some like funky stuff going on with the development of the sequels that I will be interested to share later. But in this game, in Madelyn's lore corner, basically, there's this like unexplainable massacre that takes place at an aerospace compound, related to a psychic named Paxton Fettel, who they like lose control of him. Right, so public thinks this is like an aerospace research company. Actually, this company is an experimental military base that's doing like telepathy experiments, that kind of thing. And really specifically working on developing like a clone soldier situation. So Fettel takes control of the clone soldiers using his like psychic powers. And so the government sends in the F.E.A.R team, which is Lieutenant Jankowski, Technical Officer Jin Soon Kwan, and you, named Point Man. Because this is a game where you, the player, are supposed to insert yourself into the character, so he can't have a name.
Like, really strongly.
Yeah.
They were harping on this, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
To me.
Particularly given that, like, Point Man, like, a big part of the story is that Point Man is hallucinating a little shining girl. So, like, really funny that they're like, that's you!
Hallucinating.
Sorry, yeah, you're right. Air quotes on that Emma's doing right now.
Yeah.
Sure. Seemingly hallucinating.
Sure.
Anyway, things go bad over the course of this expedition. And we discover that Fettel's got the same brainwave, which I guess he's like using in his psychic thing, as some that were recorded during a catastrophic event involving something called Project Origin, which F.E.A.R turns out to be a prototype from. And spoilers here, I guess, for a 21-year-old game, right? But Point Man finds out that prototypes like F.E.A.R were generated from a psychic girl named Alma, who is the supposed hallucination, who maybe is not a hallucination after all, who, while she was in a coma at age, like, 15, birthed these, like, psychic prototype people. There's some, like, there's some weird...
It's horror. I mean, it's horror.
No, I know.
It's not supposed to be cool what happened to her.
Yes.
It's quite... I mean, it is similar to stuff that happens in, like, Silent Hill 1, is what it reminds me of. So,
anyway, Alma, even though it seems like everybody thinks she's dead, you find out that she's not dead, that Point Man is actually also her child. He's the first prototype. You end up like sort of fighting with Fettel. You kill Alma's dad, who you find out was her dad. You destroy the facility. Game ends. They say, the first prototype was a complete success. Cut to black. So, some, like, horror stuff.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of transition, because I did want to say more about, like, their emphasis on, like, putting you in the character.
Yeah.
But I also want to say more about, like, the horror stuff. I'll start with the putting you in the character.
Yeah, please.
It's a really interesting thing to read, because, like, I get it on some level, right? But it's so diametrically opposed to, like, my desire playing games. Like, there was a quote in one of the many Eurogamer interviews they did. This one done by Kristen Reed was the interviewer.
There's a ton of developer interviews around this game.
But one of the developers was saying, like, oh, like, comparing it to Half-Life 2, it really takes me out of it when someone walks up to me and says, "Hey, Gordon," because I'm not Gordon.
So weird.
It's like, I love it when someone walks up to me in a game and says, "Hey, Gordon," and I'm like, hell yeah, I'm not Gordon.
Right. That's not me. Yeah, it's particularly interesting in a game that is, to a certain extent... Look, it's wrong to describe this game as a military power fantasy, right? Yeah. But, like, any first-person shooter game where you're playing as a, like, special forces U.S. military guy has some element of that. Even if, ultimately, like, it's not like these people are getting portrayed as, like, great people, or that things that are happening here are great, or that the military comes out of this, like, looking great, of course. By the way, this game's set in 2025.
I mean, I think this game is kind of barely about the military.
Sure. I just mean to say, like, any game in which you were playing, like, anonymous gun-wielding guy is an interesting game to feel so strongly about someone identifying with personally. Even in a, like, I'm comparing this, obviously in The Last of Us there are characters, right? But I'm thinking about, would I have an easier time identifying as, like, nameless... The story wouldn't work this way, so, like, give me the grain of salt here. But would I have an easier time identifying as, like, nameless Joel taking care of little girl, or, like, special forces guy having hallucinations? Like, probably the former.
Sure.
All things considered. So it's interesting.
I think some of it is also, like, the horror aspect of it is, like, the emphasis on wanting you to feel as close to it as possible. Like, these guys would make this, if they were making it today, they'd do VR, right?
Sure.
That's what it feels like to me.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same interview, which was with the director of technology at the time, I did think it was interesting, like, they weren't saying, like, that we are the first to do this, but a lot of first-person shooters at the time did not actually show your body.
Oh, I thought this was a weird tidbit too.
Your character's body. You would just be sort of like a floating gun. If you look down, you wouldn't, like, see your feet. And some shooters still do this to a certain extent, although I think hands are pretty expected at this point. But they put, like, emphasis on, like, you see your body and your body casts shadows, and in some ways, you know, you can be scared by your own sort of physical body in the game.
Yeah.
Which I do think is, like, interesting. Like, I don't really think that F.E.A.R is examining that necessarily as, like, a horror theme, but it is certainly an interesting, like, way to emphasize, like, your presentness in it.
That's true. I agree. Even if unintentional in this case, or semi-intentional.
Yeah.
All right, so talk to me about the horror a little bit. This game, very, you know, on one hand, they spoke a lot about wanting it to feel like a specific kind of action film, right? Like a John Woo film, like The Matrix. And a significant mechanic in this game is a bullet time, sort of reflex time, they call it, where you can slow down time because your character has also has special powers, right? And that's how it's justified. But
The
they're
slow-mo also really interesting, actually, in terms of like how it's used.
Yeah. And you have to like, I saw a lot of reviews. They're like, set your difficult. Like this is a game that rewards being kind of hard. But it's also very influenced by like a lot of media at this time, I guess. But like
they really emphasize Japanese horror.
Yeah. The Ring.
The Ring. Which I wasn't. I guess I was kind of aware there was like an American remake of The Ring.
Oh, I was aware of that. Maybe you were too young to like. I remember the TV ads for that,
but I don't really remember it being different than Sadako. It's like she's the original Ring has a older girl who's Sadako, and the American remake has a small girl named like Samako or something.
Sure.
And so they say like they were not directly inspired by the little girl in The Ring.
Yeah.
But that was like one of many elements, and of course, little scary girls are a staple of all horror.
Sure.
I think they brought up like The Shining also.
Yes. Some good old fashioned
scary
Kubrick.
Little girls. There was one quote, I don't remember which interview this was from. There were so many developer interviews, but they were talking about like, yeah, little girl's kind of scary because like for our core audience, that's as distant as a person can get from you.
Yeah.
Basically, like it's hard to understand a girl and it's hard to understand a kid. It's like, sure.
Yeah. Like, you got it, dudes. You understand your audience here, so more power to you.
I do get at least the part of like, you can see this like badass military guy, and on the inside maybe you're still thinking like, yeah, but like I could get the drop on him and take him,
Yeah.
Like I could do something that would take this guy down, versus like a little small girl, doing horrible things. At that point you're like, I don't know, maybe I'm getting out of there.
Maybe I should do a side quest on little girls, on child girls in games. Well, it's an interesting, like, I brought up The Last of Us totally randomly 5 minutes ago, but it's that developer interview tidbit is so interesting, like juxtaposed against the dad game revolution that would come in a decade.
Yeah.
Juxtaposed against the now she's the protagonist that follows, now, like, I guess from like Horizon onward, right? But yeah, so interesting for it to be like, oh, for like successful developer guys in 2005, it's like, no, like a little girl, I can't even imagine seeing one of those. Like, it would freak me out to even see one. Versus 10 years later when it's like, no, like they've all got a little girl, like we've all got a little girl now, and so she's in the game. Versus now where it's like, okay, like maybe the little girl sometimes gets to have her own gun. But an interesting, so much of the horror genre has solidified around certain types of games. It's interesting to see this earlier, a first-person shooter in this sort of like action movie style would probably not be a horror game like this now, or wouldn't be talked about that way in the same way.
Well, I mean,
that's not to say those elements can't be there. It's just interesting how much this game was like talked about as a horror game, in a way that I don't think we would now.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there are less. In some ways, I feel like there are less military shooters outside of like the core
Call of
ones.
Duty's cornered the market. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's less genre differences in the military shooter.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. That's a whole other topic, I suppose.
Sure.
But yeah, I feel like now horror games, they're just not really, they've certainly become more psychological, I think, rather than this of course pulls from Japanese horror, which at the time was certainly a lot more subtextual than what America was making. I think in one interview they were talking like the Japanese horror movies they were watching were very ghost heavy versus the American horror movies they were watching at the time was very monster heavy. Which is, I think, was an interesting distinction to make. And I think that we've gone, in some ways, more ghost heavy. Well, it's interesting to think about in what Resident Evil is doing.
Yeah.
Or has been doing over the last few years, as well.
Well, I want to talk about the sequels because there's like wild, weird story here. But I have a couple of like weird, mid 2000s tidbits, which is this game was revealed in 2004 with a screenshot of the game that said, they say bullets taste like chicken. Hope you're hungry.
Whatever that means.
Like, it's so weird because it has just nothing to do with the game. Thematically wrong.
There's certainly a lot of shooting.
Sure. Sorry, I don't mean to say that there's not a lot of shooting.
They do talk pretty extensively about their enemy AI system.
Yes, which was very advanced for the time and for much of the following time.
Yes.
Their AI, they did a lot of interviews about how a lot of advancements in AI at the time were just about hard coding more things for the AI to do. Mm-hmm. And they have a system that allowed it to kind of like plan, basically a goal-based system.
They gave it a goal, and then it would respond to the information that they gave them in order to find a way to that goal. So things like if you shot down one person in a certain area, that area would become dangerous for the rest of them. Or if you flee combat, they'll start looking for you in groups of 2. Or will shout out and inform the other enemy AIs exactly what you're doing. And most impressively, I think, because I think a lot of games still don't do this, change where they pop out of cover.
Yeah. They also do a great job of fooling the player into thinking the AI is even smarter than it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's key to a lot of it still.
Sure. But, like, they talked in specific detail about how, something that gets called out in a lot of the reviews is it seems like the AI, like, gives each other commands, right? And they said that's not really how it works, right? It's not that the AI is listening to the other and the other opponent and doing what it says. Actually, its goal-based system is like making a choice, and then that prompts the other character to say something related to that choice, and then it does it. So, man, games are crazy.
I know.
But yeah, they say bullets taste like chicken, hope you're hungry reads like a Borderlands. Like,
it does.
That doesn't even really make sense as a Borderlands promo.
Yeah.
This game is not mad funny. I like it is mad funny. But speaking of mad funny, also in the run-up, they had Rooster Teeth make a pre-release comedy series called Panics. People acting normal in crazy-ass situations. That's I can never pronounce this. Machinima?
I think it's Machinima.
Whatever. It's where they like have game engine footage and then they put dialogue over it, right?
Yes, Rooster Teeth like very well known for this for a while.
Yes, that's a parody of F.E.A.R. Which they were like, the game's serious, so we want to make something kind of funny to promote it. Huh?
Why not?
No, I mean, why not? But just that
one makes
vibes.
more sense to me than bullets taste like chicken, to be fair.
Okay, so let's talk about... So first of all, F.E.A.R is another... Let's start with the sequels, right? F.E.A.R is another one of these series that we've talked about lately that it's like, it had its last entry in like 2011 and has never been heard from again.
And never will be.
And now never will be because the studio is closed. And because, like, frankly, I don't know. People like F.E.A.R. The retrospectives on F.E.A.R, particularly the first one, are quite positive. Yeah. But it does feel like the kind of game... I mean, like you said, this is just not what military shooters are about now. And so it does feel hard to revive from that standpoint, too. But, so F.E.A.R was followed by a few expansion packs that Vivendi the publisher, had different developers make. And they made a big deal at the time about how even though Monolith wasn't making it, they had signed off on the story beats that were in these expansion packs. And that seems to not really have been the case.
Yeah.
So Monolith, shortly after this game was made, was purchased by WB, who owned them until they closed the studio last year. And while the studio owned like the IP to the actual content of the game, they did not own the name F.E.A.R, which is what a weird, like, who signed that deal on both sides, frankly.
I don't know. But I mean, I imagine that's part of like why they say like we didn't pick that name.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the studio told you to name it F.E.A.R. But yeah, they own still like the world and characters and stuff.
So basically, Monolith was like, okay, that's fine. Apparently, we don't even like the name anyway. So we're going to go ahead and make basically a sequel to this, and we're just going to call it something else. Because we own the meaningful IP.
Yeah, I think they're going to call it Project Origin. I think that's still the subtitle of
Yes, which they actually got from a contest that they ran to have people send in names to suggest. They said they rejected, they had a lot of, like, Meat, Afraid, Chuck Norris, these are all acronyms, Bloodbath Tycoon, Little Miss Bloodshine. They said they got a lot of good ones. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yes, they ultimately decided to go with Project Origin, which I think was voted on. And then they did manage to reacquire the rights to the name, sort of at the last minute. So it did release as F.E.A.R 2 Project Origin, which they then said, hey, we're just going to kind of pretend that those expansion packs were like thought experiments. They don't seem to hate them, but they were just like, we thought about how we could get the story, how we could incorporate that into the story we wanted to tell, and we realized that we didn't want to.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we need more attitudes like that.
I think you could not do that now. But then again, I think that situation of like an expansion, like
other people developing off your IP,
like without your permission,
just
wouldn't happen this way now. But I agree it was cool. So they released F.E.A.R 2, which I won't try to recap, except that there's like weird, like maybe like non-consensual stuff that happens at the end, initiated by the girl.
I don't know. I didn't look into F.E.A.R 2 at all.
Like, like ends with her like impregnating herself with the main character, but like sort of forcing him with her psychic powers.
Sure.
Which, like, okay, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to. It sounds like people didn't like F.E.A.R 2 as much, but it's hard to judge plot details like that out of context.
Yes, they tried really hard to take. F.E.A.R 1 sold well, was well liked. And they tried really hard to respond to some of the criticism of the game to make it even better, and seemed to have, like, sanded off some of what people liked about it in the process. Which is the danger of trying to do too much to your already 9 out of 10 game, right? Is you maybe lose some of the things that people liked. But, so, like, that was one thing. But then there's F.E.A.R 3, which was originally going to be F.E.A.R 2. Did you read about this at all?
I did not. But I know F.E.A.R 3 was not developed by Monolith.
It was not. F.E.A.R 3 was developed by a studio called Day One, which had been, like, contracted by Vivendi to make F.E.A.R 2 when they owned that name.
I see.
So they were working on that, but then Warner Brothers bought the name, so Vivendi was not going to move forward with F.E.A.R 2 under theirs, right? Their other F.E.A.R 2. Mm-hmm. But Warner Brothers, like, talked to the Day One people. They were like, oh, we kind of like this. I guess Monolith signed off on it. So then it became F.E.A.R 3.
Awesome.
Wild. I mean, I'm sure they did a bunch of reworking on it, but they liked it enough to, like, say, all right, sure.
Yeah.
Let's do a third one. Anyway, people don't really like F.E.A.R 2 or F.E.A.R 3 very much. But they are out there in Xbox world. They're backwards compatible. You can play them.
All right, one last detail about the slow-mo system that I think is really cute.
Please.
Of course, F.E.A.R also has a multiplayer mode, as all shooters
Games of this era did.
Yeah, they were contractually obligated to have some sort of multiplayer mode at the
Yeah.
time, I believe. I don't actually know if that's true there, but I think all
Feels
shooters were contractually obligated to
Yeah.
do so. And the way slow-mo works in the single player game is it's on like a meter, essentially, and you can activate it at certain times to gain certain advantages. In the multiplayer mode, essentially it's like a resource that you can find and like activate for your team.
Oh, cool.
And so your whole team is like moving faster than the other team by like 20% for a certain
Weird.
period of time.
Yeah.
Which I think is just like cool.
Yeah. Yeah, what an interesting challenge to have to like implement that.
Yeah. Like they were saying, like it's just enough in multiplayer that you notice it, right? That it's a noticeable boost or change, but also that like theoretically you could be on the bad side of the slow-mo and still get like a good shot off and be like, heck yeah. You know, like I really accomplished something there.
Yeah.
So that's like a cool system that I feel like has not really been played with in the multiplayer sphere at all, of like this team has been sped up.
Yeah. It's an interesting, I understand why, because it seems challenging to implement successfully, but you're right, like that's such an action movie staple.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's F.E.A.R.
Well, now it's time for the romance game, Ball X Pit.
A game that also induces fear, I think, in some people.
It does. It induces fear in me. I bought it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Man, don't you know that Vampire Crawlers just came out?
I bought this instead. Crazy how influential Vampire Survivors is.
Heck yeah. Well, I mean, isn't Vampire Survivors just an evolution of, like, Cookie Clicker?
No.
No?
I don't think so. I see what you're getting at, but Cookie Clicker is just you click there's strategy to these games.
No, you buy stuff in Cookie Clicker when you get enough cookies, and then it starts automatically getting more cookies for you over time. I'm just saying, that's what I mean by evolution, right?
Sure.
They've added choices to Cookie Clicker. But it's still sort of the same sort of formula of, like, you start by just having, like, your one thing that you're going up slowly, but then you get more things that sort of automatically do more for you.
Okay. That's fair. But I'll say the articles don't say Cookie Clicker. Like, you're probably right that there was a game before Metroid that was kind of like Metroid, right? Actually, maybe not, but, you know.
When did, no, Metroid was definitely before Castlevania.
So, it just fascinating to see. I mean, it's a great concept, but also it's everywhere now.
Yeah. And I don't think that, Vampire Survivors or Ball Pit is gambling, but I certainly see the design discussion happening of whether it's using casino-oriented parts of your brain.
Sure.
To endeavor you to give more to it, but in this case it's just more time rather than more money.
Yes, but time is money. Just kidding. This game is pretty good. So Ball Pit came out in October, last past October, from developer Kenny Sun, published by Devolver for everything, basically. I got it for Nintendo Switch because I thought it might be fun to play on my commute. We'll report back next week on how many times I miss my stop.
Okay.
While playing it.
That was one of the inspirations.
Really?
Is that he, there was,
There's like a mobile game that he...
Yes, an interview with, Game Rant, where he talked about he got a game on his phone called Punball.
Mm-hmm.
This was in 2021. and he downloaded it and started playing it, and then realized that he had missed his stop 15 minutes later.
Yeah.
So
great. Well, I look forward to that. But ultimately, developer Kenny Sun felt that game, he said, I really like that game. I think this is from this interview. I can't remember if it's the same one or a different one where he was telling this story. But he was like, I didn't like the free-to-play element of this. Like, I didn't like the literal gambling or you know, money in element. I wanted to create something that kind of felt like this, but where I could just charge people something and they could play it. Right? And no doubt he played Vampire Survivors and thought, perhaps this. Anyway, so Ball Pit is, as is described in like literally every article, Vampire Survivors meets Brick Breaker or Peggle or whatever, any of these, like in Pong, ultimately, really, right? If we really want to roll it back, even though the brick breaking is an important part of it, meets like...
A lot of people bring up a game called Arkanoid.
Sure, that too. And then it also has kind of a city building component. I don't know. That part doesn't actually remind me of Cult of Lamb, but the like it's a roguelike tied to you're building something back there did remind me of that, even though there's no that happens, which is disappointing.
Just ball bouncing noises.
Just ball bouncing noises. And so yes, in this game, the story doesn't matter. But the city of Balbalon, fell into a pit, basically, and the survivors are rebuilding new Balbalon and exploring the pit. And so basically this takes the form of like approximately 15-minute runs through like enemies where your character is shooting off balls that bounce around and can acquire various special abilities like setting enemies on fire, like doing bleed damage, like passing through enemies, whatever. And you pick up little gems, which are experience to level up. What does this remind you of? Vampire Survivors. And each time you get to choose between a bunch of different little upgrades for yourselves, and some of the balls fuse into other more powerful balls. And so like it really is just Vampire Survivors, except you only walk forward. And then back in town there's like some resource gathering, bouncing around, and upgrades, and you can unlock new characters by building things in your town and that kind of thing.
The part that does particularly remind me of Cookie Clicker, which you probably haven't gotten to this point yet, but I was reading an interview with Stephen Totillo on his game file thing.
Is that behind a paywall?
Yes, it is behind a paywall.
Why do all the real journalists make me pay for their work now? It sucks.
He does like 1 or 2 a week that are free, I think.
No, I know,
but yes, a lot of them are behind paywalls. But he was saying he unlocked a character called the Cogitator, who
have
just
not unlocked that one.
Making some of your decisions for you.
Yes, I've heard about the late game character that plays the game for you.
Yes. So like they found it, the funny thing of it, like developing into an idle game the more that you play.
Yeah. Which is true of Vampire Survivors ultimately,
it's eventually about it's about standing and watching your awesome power destroy everything around you.
Yeah.
Which is funny.
So far, and I've unlocked the second pit, and unlocked 4 characters so far. And so far, it has not reached Vampire Survivors level of, like, this might be a seizure risk, like, gaming.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff going on screen, but not like Vampire Survivors, which is probably to its benefit. I think that game, I mean, obviously part of the point of Vampire is that it gets overwhelming like that, but I sometimes, like, when I play it on an airplane, I feel bad.
Sure.
I'm like, whoever's sitting next to me is getting subjected to a light show that they did not sign up for. I am enjoying this game. I am getting the, like, ooh, I would like to play a little more brain itch from it. I like unlocking things. I like getting better at things. But I can already anticipate, I identified with this quote from the Verge review which was, by the end of my time with Ball Pit, I will admit I started to feel a bit of the emptiness I do when I play Vampire Survivors now. Once winning became more routine, I started to focus on maximizing things in a way that felt more obsessive rather than fun. I'm even ashamed to say I let the autoplay character handle a bunch of runs on the last level while I went and did other things. Which I can already anticipate. That is how I feel about Vampire Survivors. I will sometimes use it on like long flights or whatever. And I ought to try I still haven't tried the multiplayer, even though that's been out for years now. I should try that, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I should actually let Steam update the game so I've got new things to unlock. But I can already anticipate this is a game that I'm going to feel similarly about at the end, where it's just sort of like...
I mean, charitably... Perhaps that's somewhat intentional of a way of building an endpoint into a game that doesn't have an endpoint.
Yes, agreed.
Like, okay, once you can play it by yourself, maybe you should stop.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's a bad thing. I read that and I was like, oh yes, that is how I feel about Vampire Survivors. In a way that I don't necessarily think I feel about, like, Balatro.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting to consider the different, or even about Binding of Isaac. And looking back at my sort of various roguelike crazy obsessions, right? I think that I found those two games, or find, I don't know, I've not allowed myself to play either of those in quite some time, nor shall I. There are other games to play. But I do feel like those games continue to have a level of variation of challenge, perhaps. Partially, I think, because even though, you know, you can, like, unlock more stuff, or you can, like, level up characters, sort of, whatever, a little bit in those games, you kind of start from scratch each time. You know, that scratch might be a tiny bit different. But in these, like... And maybe, I guess that's true in Vampire Survivors. But no, it's not. You level up stats. You can buy stat level ups. I take that back. But, like, this game, because you are improving your characters over time, I can already see how, like, that challenge will eventually disappear.
Yeah, I had read one blog post on a blog called Static Canvas that was talking about, like, yeah, like you were saying, it doesn't really have, like, a sense of emergence.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were comparing it to Spelunky.
Yeah. I hate, like, Spelunky.
I know you hate Spelunky, but in terms of, like, every run you do in Spelunky is entirely fresh.
Yeah.
Right? You're a new character, you're going on a new adventure, like, new things sort of are happening. And so there's a sense of emergence, even as you do or do not make progress.
Right.
Whereas in this, they say it feels more like, well, there's, like, a desperation not to leave things unfinished.
Which is in itself a very brick breaker kind of attitude, right? It's a chipping away at it. It's a steady progress thing.
Yeah. In terms of, like, chaos on screen, there was one blog post from Kenny Sun about, like, the sound design challenges of doing Ball Pit, where you might have many balls on screen bouncing and making sounds, which I thought was like, yeah, that's an interesting sort of unique challenge of how do you stop that from turning into just, like, actual white noise. And he talked about, like, one, like, making the sound effects very quick without, like, tails. Using ways like the certain types of balls, the more important sounds of, like, bosses and special balls would compress the less important sounds, so those would get sort of quieter over time. And also, like, instance limiting, so that it only will play a certain amount of times with cooldowns in between. So it won't necessarily play every time that it's supposed to.
And it's the kind of thing that a player will never notice.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just this is such, like, a unique challenge of the sorts of games where things are on screen, right? Like, you have to deal with, like, the visual information, obviously, but also like the auditory information. I just found it interesting, especially I think I am someone who gets disturbed by certain sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always interesting to read about like how you handle the sound design of things that are overwhelming in certain ways.
Do you think this game would have been more successful? And it's been very successful, right? No surprise.
It was nominated for Best Debut Indie at the Jeffs.
At the Jeffs. When will they make the trophy for that him?
I'm surprised it's not already. It just should be.
Yeah.
Let's abandon all pretense, okay?
If he were to die tragically, they would do that immediately.
Don't say that.
I'm not, that was a pure if. That's not,
Okay.
I don't think, that's not going to happen. I'm just saying, like, that is what they would do.
Yeah.
So yes, it's quite successful, unsurprisingly reviewed very well. Although I think there is that, like, a slight level of, like, tiny bit of cynicism to reviews of these games.
We're feeling some fatigue. I feel like some reviews we're starting to feel some fatigue of this genre.
Yeah.
For various reasons.
Like, Ball Pit with its Tactus mashup vibes has gotten in under the radar, or like gotten in under the wire here of reviewers are so tired of this.
Yeah.
But I think that backlash is coming. But it was originally going to be titled City of Balls.
Yes.
Which I think would be better.
Yeah, the tone of this is very like we're saying kind of silly things.
Yeah.
But in a very sort of serious manner.
Yes, all of the level up screens end with you hitting the whoa button.
Good. I like a good confirm button.
Yeah, this one's good. The whoa is nice.
I've been playing Titanium Court, and they have a button that's okay.
Nice.
That you have to use a lot.
Yeah. Ball Pit has continued to get updates. It's not clear to me if that was like really the 100% initial plan, and then it sold so well that they were kind of like, all right, we got to do this.
I mean, you have a publisher like Devolver.
I'm sure there was a plan for it, but it did get announced in a way that made it sound like, all right, we're supporting this for another year. And when I say this game is a game that was like really headed up by a solo dev, although there is definitely a team, an accredited team around it.
Yeah.
Which sometimes does not make its way into writing about the game, even though the first screen is like developed by Kenny Sun and friends.
That's a common thing that happens.
Sure. Of course. So they've added a couple of updates, including one that was just like a couple weeks ago with new characters and new bouncy balls. That is the thing that will get me back into Balatro, by the way, whenever that like...
They add bouncy balls?
Yes.
Got it.
No. He's been like threatening a big update at some point.
They add little keys that jangle at you occasionally?
Yeah. Exactly. But they did add an endless mode to this, which is obviously a smart move.
Mm-hmm.
And have continued to add new stuff, which is like a smart way to keep people, I guess, keep the game in the news, I guess. Keep people buying it that way.
Apparently there was a pet system at some point.
I saw that. R.I.P.
You could bring pets in. But it was just, with all the character stuff, it was apparently, like, too much to manage. Specifically called out the monkey that would jump on enemies.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Although he said that, like, he doesn't like wasting work. So maybe that will come back in somehow. At some point.
I would support the monkey returning. There's already little, like, sentinel guys that you can have go forward. I don't see why a monkey would be a problem.
That could be a monkey.
Thank you. Anyway, I am enjoying Ball Pit. I will certainly play through it, I think. It makes a nice counterpart to so I did finish Citizen Sleeper 2, and now I have started Exocolonist.
Woo-hoo.
So it's like total opposite
Yeah.
games.
Yeah.
One just nothing but story. Tiny bit of cards. This one, nothing but balls.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully they're not going to kill my best friend in Ball Pit.
You'd hope so.
Fingers crossed. If they kill the ball,
that would be tough.
It's over. All right.
Just Pit? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Devastating, tragic end to the romance.
I know. Doomed romance.
Yeah. Star-crossed lovers. Sorry. Star lovers.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Ball Pit is already essentially a Talk This mashup, so good luck to us.
The balls are scary.
Horror balls.
This is not quite a mashup of anything, but of balls are scary. This is more of a cookie clicker.
Oh, by the way,
directly.
The beginning cutscene of the game makes it seem like it's a Katamari that destroys the town.
Awesome.
Just putting that out
what
there.
Is that? But the ball.
No, exactly.
But the last Steam Next Fest, I did play a demo for a game called Scope Creep, where you're like gathering souls for like a demon thing.
Okay.
And you get more like upgrades for your ability to gather souls over time.
Okay.
So like you can do something incremental horror-y still.
Yeah. I see what you're getting at there. I don't mind that. I don't know. I mean, I guess everyone loved Hades, right? So I'll put that big asterisk by this. But like most of these, Survivor-vanias, don't really have a story.
Yeah. They're also quite, I feel like a lot of these are quite parody.
Yeah. There's a whimsicalness to them, or a tongue-in-cheek element. Yeah. So you're right to say that like sort of a straightforwardly horror one hasn't been done, but I'm also curious if like we care enough. It's interesting to me that so far, and probably because it is so difficult to replicate something that has the vastness of Hades at the scale, like relative to creating something that's like Vampire Survivors mashed with some other simple game, right? But it's interesting to me that it's like we've seen so many Vampire Survivors clones. Not clones, that's a bad way of putting it, but like riffs. But like it's an iterative story that's happening across the run Hades thing. I feel like not so many of those.
I did try also a few Next Fests ago, I think. Vampire Survivors like called Hell Maiden, I think. That I think is like a sequel to Dante's Inferno.
Cool.
But Dante's like a cool goth girl.
Awesome. Great.
It was pretty fun. But you do come back and you talk to like the goddesses or whatever.
I dig that.
So you can do it. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not saying you can't do it. It's just it's interesting to me to think about these two games that came out at a similar time. Maybe I don't remember what Vampire Survivors actually released, but ballpark similar release times, and how we are so freaking sick. We're not. We're still playing it. We are on the verge of being so freaking sick of anything that resembles Vampire Survivors. And meanwhile, like the Hades side of it has had significantly
I feel like
fewer.
we're kind of almost sick of pick from three items type games too, though.
That's crazy for you to say.
Is it?
Match 3 aficionado here.
That's not the same as pick
I know
from
they're
three
not
items.
the same. I'm just kidding. A pick 3 match 3 would be pretty bold.
No, it would be very stereotypically indie of us to do like a response to these types of games that's like a horror about like completion and consumption.
Yeah, like you are someone who can't stop playing
these games.
Yeah. Ultimately, what is that if not baby steps? But
And also, you're in the military. And honestly, what could be more horrible?
yeah, you are experiencing PTSD, which you are coping with by playing a
Oh,
large
jeez.
amount of Vampire Survivors.
That's very indie.
Yeah, no, we can't do that. I'll say that there's definitely something playing around with like the bullet hell of it all that's probably possible, or like the kind of, ultimately Ball Pit is also to a certain extent like you're defeating like monster-y type things. There's like a siege military offensive. There's like a D-Day element
Mm-hmm.
to this. You could probably do a like swarms of like Mongol invasion, the 300 maybe, like a 300 style um like endless enemy situation. That doesn't really encapsulate the horror.
Is that a Warriors game? Are we gonna make a Warriors game? Is that what we're doing?
Shoot. Warriors with guns.
Warriors with guns. Sure.
Like bullet hell warriors.
Okay.
I don't know how you would do that. That actually doesn't sound feasible to me. But that's the idea.
With slow-mo.
With slow-mo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a scary little girl in it.
Definitely. But playing what role?
We make a game that's about playing foursquare with a scary little girl.
Yo, and you do kind of get powers in Foursquare.
Yeah.
Cherry Bomb. I don't remember any of the other ones.
Nope.
Interesting. That has nothing to do with either of these games. So it would be kind of
Ball and scary girl. Come on.
You're so right.
Sometimes that's all you need.
I didn't even think of the ball element of it. You're so right. I take it back. Wow, I'd be all over and it really scratches your itch for more sports games.
Exactly.
Awesome. Great. Sounds good to me. Well, I'm gonna call it there. I don't think we're gonna get something better than the Foursquare game.
Yeah.
So listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Do you ship Ball and Pit? Do you think you could come up with a better acronym for F.E.A.R that would have allowed them to keep making these games without them having to be about the first encounter assault recon unit? Do you wish that more games became the threequel when they were originally intended as the sequel? Are you also starting to... Do you have a good genre title for the Vampire Survivors boom that we're seeing? And when do you think it will go bust? Do you think Ball Pit should have been called City of Balls? Correct answer, yes. If you have thoughts about this or anything else we talked about on the show this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog. What is Pac-Man if not Ball Pit, really?
Sure.
You could make a Pac-Man bullet hell.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's because I will eventually write my Pac-Man vegetarian series. That was only for people who have been listening the past few weeks. I said series as if I'm going to need multiple blog posts to investigate, which maybe I will. Who could say, really? But most importantly, if you enjoyed the show, you ought to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe to Talk This so you never miss an episode on Sundays at noon. It's 6 weeks in gaming next week. Woohoo! So look forward to more Ball Pit discussion, and also the other games that I'm playing, and also the games that Emma's playing, including Trails to wherever they're going now.
Yeah.
Trails
True.
to Pit.
Trails to Pit.
But Emma, what are we going to be talking about in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, for our old game, we're going to be talking about Hearthstone.
Sure, I've played that one.
There you go.
Have I? Is that what I mean?
I have no idea.
I mean, I think I'm thinking of something else. Anyway, sorry, go on.
And for our new game, we're talking about Neo Memories in Orbit.
I have played Hearthstone.
Yeah.
Neo Memories in Orbit?
Yes.
Cool. So look forward to that. And then that means I get a Memorial Day me side quest. I think.
Sure.
So it'd be beach or death.
Great.
So look
or
forward
little
to
girls.
that. Yeah. Well, that's it for this week's show. Thanks for listening. Emma, sign us off.
This week I hope that your balls no
All right.
I've got nothing.